Emperor's most feared alien woman general knelt down and surrendered to a human. The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds across the endless blackness of space. Among them glided the flagship Crimson Talon, a ship of alien design unlike anything humans had ever seen. Its sleek surface reflected faint starlight, while intricate patterns along its hull hinted at a culture steeped in both tradition and power. Within its command center, General Xylura stood tall, her scales glinting softly under the lights. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the holographic display before her. She was known throughout the galaxy as a general who never lost a battle, a strategist whose mind could foresee enemy movements before they even happened. Her reputation alone inspired awe and fear across star systems, and yet, as she surveyed the neutral belt, a cluster of asteroid fields that many deemed impassable, something stirred uneasily within her. Reports had come in from scouts. A human fleet was moving toward the belt. Humans, she had studied them briefly in her early years when she was a young officer eager to make her mark. They were considered weak, undisciplined, and slow to learn. No human fleet had ever posed a serious threat, and yet this time felt different. Commander Elias Kane of the human fleet was not known across the galaxy. No one outside the human systems had heard of him, but what Xylura did not yet know was that humans often thrived in situations where others expected them to fail. Kane had grown up in a system constantly overlooked by larger civilizations, and that had taught him something most leaders in the galaxy never learned. Humans could turn disadvantage into strength. Xylura's fingers traced the controls delicately. Her fleet was scattered, some ships guarding trade routes, others patrolling distant sectors. She could call them back and engage the human fleet with full force, but something about these humans, even the mere mention of them, made her hesitate. She remembered reading reports of human diplomacy, their ability to negotiate and adapt in ways that no other species seemed capable of. Xylura had been raised in a culture where power was shown through victory, yet she found herself wondering if there was something she had overlooked in these humans, something that could not be measured by weapons alone. As the distance closed, a holographic image of the approaching fleet appeared. Kane's ships were smaller, simpler, but they moved with surprising coordination. Xylura leaned closer to the display, her brow furrowing. Each maneuver the humans executed seemed unpredictable, yet calculated. It was as if they anticipated her strategy before she even laid it out. She felt the familiar rush of challenge stir within her, a feeling she had not experienced in years. The Crimson Talon had faced thousands of enemies, but never a foe who could make her doubt. Kane's voice came over the communications channel, calm and measured. "General Xylura, I do not wish to fight if it can be avoided. There is a path through the neutral belt that can allow both our fleets to pass safely. I propose a meeting to discuss terms that preserve lives and maintain honor." Xylura paused. No enemy had ever spoken to her with such respect, or offered her options instead of threats. She studied the human commander's tone, the subtle confidence behind it. Kane did not sound weak. He sounded aware, curious, even slightly amused. This was dangerous. It was the kind of danger she had always been drawn to. The unknown, the unpredictable, the mind that could match her own. She straightened her shoulders and spoke, her voice smooth and commanding. "Your words are unusual for a human, Commander Kane. Most of your kind would either retreat or attack without thought. Why do you seek negotiation instead of confrontation?" There was a brief pause before Kane replied. "Because I have learned that the strongest victories come not from destruction, but from understanding. I have no desire to test your fleet in battle if we can find a solution that benefits both sides." Xylura's scales shimmered with faint green as she considered his words. She had studied humans, but never in such depth. The truth was, she had underestimated them. Their culture was chaotic to her eyes, their governments messy and unpredictable, yet that very chaos had taught them creativity. The human approach to conflict, seeing it as a puzzle rather than a war, was alien to her, yet it intrigued her. She issued commands to her officers, repositioning ships subtly, creating a formation that allowed for defense but also gave space for negotiation. The alien crew glanced at her curiously, accustomed to a general who demanded obedience without question. But Xylura's mind was already far beyond standard protocol. She wanted to see what this human could do, to understand the cleverness behind his calm demeanor. Minutes stretched into hours as the two fleets approached one another through the maze of the neutral belt. Asteroids drifted slowly, their surfaces scarred from countless collisions over millennia. Kane's ships moved with care, avoiding debris while maintaining formation. Xylura could not help but admire the precision. Every human maneuver, though simple in appearance, carried a hidden logic she had not anticipated. When Kane requested a direct visual transmission, Xylura agreed. The large communication viewport opened, showing the human commander standing on the deck of his flagship. His posture was relaxed but confident, his eyes bright and alert. There was no trace of arrogance, yet his presence radiated authority. He seemed human, and yet there was something more, something that made Xylura's instincts sharpen. "General Xylura," Kane said again, "I do not wish for this meeting to be a trap. I respect your reputation, and I understand the sacrifices it has taken to achieve it. I am here to discuss a way forward that honors both our fleets." Xylura's lips pressed into a thin line. She had fought countless enemies who underestimated her intelligence, who assumed her reputation was her weakness. And yet, here was a human who treated her as an equal, not a monster to be slain, nor a target to be toyed with, but a commander worthy of strategy and dialogue. "Why me?" she asked quietly, more to herself than to Kane. "Why would a human seek parley with me of all people?" "Because," Kane said softly, "I believe even the most feared leader can teach us something. Even the strongest mind can choose wisdom over fear." "That is what I wish to learn from you." Xylura's heart, or whatever her alien equivalent was, beat faster. She had never expected admiration from an enemy, let alone an enemy human, and yet she felt it. A spark of curiosity, a flicker of excitement that reminded her why she had chosen this path of command. She realized then that this encounter could change everything, not just for her, but for her fleet, for her people, for the way humans were perceived across the galaxy. She made her decision. Slowly, deliberately, she gestured toward Kane's transmission. "Very well, we will meet, temporarily on neutral terms. My ship will open a channel for a secure conversation. But know this, Commander Kane, any deception and you will regret it." "Understood," Kane replied, his eyes calm yet piercing. "And I give you my word, honesty and respect are the only terms I offer." The communication ended, leaving Xylura to contemplate the unfolding situation. Her officers were silent, sensing the change in their general. For the first time in decades, Xylura felt uncertainty. But it was not fear, it was anticipation, the thrill of challenge. She had faced countless battles, but never one like this, one of intellect, strategy, and trust. And somehow the thought of meeting a human on equal footing, rather than crushing them, ignited something she could not ignore. As her fleet glided through the neutral belt, Xylura prepared. She examined maps, simulations, and past human encounters. She studied Kane's communication patterns, noting his calmness, his choice of words, and the subtle ways he respected protocol without being constrained by it. She found herself thinking not just as a general, but as a student, eager to learn what made humans so different. Hours later, she stood on the bridge, gazing at the endless stars. She realized something extraordinary. Humans were not merely survivors, as many species assumed. They were thinkers, adapters, and negotiators. They could turn weaknesses into strengths, chaos into opportunity. And now she was about to meet one face-to-face, a human who could match her in ways no alien had ever done. The Crimson Talon approached the rendezvous point, and Xylura felt a strange sense of anticipation. This meeting could be dangerous, yes, but it could also redefine her understanding of the galaxy. Perhaps humans were not to be underestimated. Perhaps, in their simplicity and ingenuity, they represented something even greater than brute power. And with that thought, Xylura allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. She had faced countless battles, yet this encounter, felt like the most exciting challenge of her life. The stars stretched on endlessly before her, and somewhere within their infinite depths, a human commander waited. Xylura did not know it yet, but the first step of a historic meeting had already begun. The meeting point was a quiet pocket of space between two asteroids, their surfaces pockmarked and glowing faintly from reflected starlight. Xylura's flagship hovered cautiously, her crew tense but disciplined. Even with her reputation, she felt a strange anticipation that she had not felt in years. It was not fear, far from it, but a curiosity that prickled at her scales. Commander Kane's fleet was waiting. Unlike the alien ships that surrounded her, Human vessels were smaller, lighter, and almost fragile in appearance. Yet they moved with a rhythm that suggested coordination and discipline. Xylura studied them, noting how each ship adjusted its position slightly, creating a balanced formation without the rigid symmetry she expected. Humans were strange, unpredictable, but there was method in their apparent simplicity. A communication channel opened, this time allowing direct visual transmission of the two leaders. Kane appeared on Xylura's main viewport. He stood tall, shoulders relaxed, hands behind his back. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp, as though he were reading not only her face but the unspoken tension in the room. "General Xylura," Kane said, voice even and steady, "thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I hope we can understand each other better." Xylura inclined her head slightly. "Commander Kane, I am curious. Why risk approaching me personally? Most humans would prefer to stay behind the safety of their fleet." Kane's smile was subtle. "Because I believe in understanding, not just observing. You command a fleet that has never been defeated. You make decisions others cannot even imagine. I want to see how you think. And perhaps, in doing so, we can avoid unnecessary conflict." Xylura allowed herself a small nod. The human's words were unusual in their honesty. She had faced countless enemies, some arrogant, others cautious, but few had approached her with such clarity. For the first time, she sensed respect, not fear or aggression. "Very well," she said. "We will speak. But I warn you, Commander, I do not tolerate deceit." Kane's smile widened just enough to convey sincerity. "Neither do I, General. I have no desire for deception. I seek only understanding and collaboration." The two leaders arranged a neutral zone within the neutral belt. Kane invited Xylura to send a small delegation to his flagship, emphasizing safety and protocol. It was an unusual request for an alien general who relied on intimidation and strength to secure respect, yet Xylura found herself agreeing. Something about this human inspired a rare trust within her. A shuttle detached from the Crimson Talon, carrying Xylura and a small group of her advisors. As they moved through space, Xylura's mind raced. She had always prepared for ambushes, for traps, for betrayal. But Kane's approach was so open, so deliberate, that she could not predict his moves in the traditional sense. There was no aggression, no false bravado, just observation, calculation, and calm confidence. It was foreign, yet intriguing. The shuttle docked with Kane's flagship. The doors opened, revealing a bright and spacious interior. Human design was simple but efficient, with soft lighting and clean surfaces. There were no intimidating walls of weapons or glaring monitors, only spaces for conversation, analysis, and collaboration. Xylura stepped in first, scanning the room with sharp eyes, noting the balance between utility and comfort. Kane greeted her personally, extending a hand in a gesture of trust. "General Xylura," he said again, his tone respectful but warm. "Welcome aboard." Xylura studied him for a moment, then nodded and shook his hand. There was a firmness to it, not weak but confident. "Your humans are unlike any I have encountered," she said, her voice low but firm. "Your fleet is smaller yet coordinated. Your approach is unconventional." "I admit I did not expect this." Kane gestured toward a central table with a holographic map of the neutral belt. "We humans have learned that creativity often comes from necessity. We adapt quickly because we must. Strength is not always about size or firepower. Sometimes it is about thinking ahead, understanding consequences, and knowing when to act." Xylura circled the table, her eyes scanning the holographic display. The neutral belt's asteroid clusters were mapped in detail, including paths that could provide safe passage or offer tactical advantage. She noticed immediately the subtle markers Kane had added, paths that were unexpected but logical, reflecting a mind that thought in layers. "You anticipate my fleet's movements," Xylura said, almost in disbelief. "This map of your planning shows insight beyond most species. How did you know I would consider this route?" Kane's expression was calm. "I didn't, not completely. But I know that leaders make decisions based on duty, responsibility, and logic. You are a commander who values your fleet and your people above all. I used that understanding to model possible actions. Humans often rely on patterns in behavior, not just predictions of battle." "It's different but effective." Xylura paused. She had trained her mind to anticipate enemies, to calculate risks and probabilities. Yet here was a human who could do the same, not by brute logic, but by reading intentions, values, and priorities. It was a new kind of challenge, one that sparked excitement in her mind. "Your thinking is remarkable," she admitted. "I have faced countless enemies who relied on technology, numbers, and intimidation. Few ever attempted to understand me rather than exploit me. You do." Kane inclined his head. "Understanding is the first step toward peace, General. Even the strongest minds can find common ground if they are willing. I believe humans are capable of surprising insight, and I see the same potential in others, even those considered enemies." Xylara's scales shimmered slightly, reflecting the soft light in the room. She felt a flicker of something she had not felt in years, curiosity mingled with respect. For decades, her life had been a cycle of command, strategy, and the unrelenting expectation of victory. Yet here, in this quiet space among the stars, she felt a sense of possibility. "Tell me, Commander," she said, her voice deliberate, "how does your species view strength? I have studied humans, but much of what I read seemed contradictory. You are small in number, yet resilient. Weak in appearance, yet adaptable. How do you define strength?" Kane smiled. "Strength is not just power, General. It is the ability to survive, to learn, to inspire cooperation, and to solve problems without unnecessary harm. Humans may not be the largest or the fastest, but we can find solutions others overlook. And sometimes, that makes us stronger than brute force alone." Xylara considered this, turning it over in her mind. The human's words resonated in a way she had not expected. In her culture, strength was often measured by dominance and fear. Yet Kane spoke of something different, something subtle yet profound. A power not of conquest, but of intellect, empathy, and adaptability. The conversation continued for hours. Kane asked about Xylara's strategies, her experiences, and her philosophy of command. In return, Xylara questioned him about human behavior, fleet coordination, and their surprising resilience in situations where others would fail. The exchange was intense, yet respectful. Each question, each answer, revealed new layers of understanding. At one point, Kane paused, resting his hands lightly on the table. "General, I have noticed something about your approach," he said. "You consider not only the battle itself, but the consequences for those who cannot defend themselves. That is rare, even among the most skilled commanders. It is why I trust that we can find a path forward without unnecessary conflict." Xylara's eyes softened slightly. Few had noticed this about her. Her victories had never been just about winning. They had always been about protecting her people, her fleet, and the innocents caught in the crossfire. Kane's recognition of that principle felt validating. It was a reminder that her efforts were understood, even appreciated, beyond mere fear or respect. As the hours passed, the human commander shared stories of his people, their culture, and their history. Xylara listened carefully, noting the patterns, the logic, and the adaptability woven into their lives. Humans were messy, yes, but there was a brilliance in that chaos, a capacity to overcome obstacles through ingenuity rather than brute force. She realized that the human fleet was not merely a threat, but a reflection of this adaptability. Kane's leadership allowed them to operate cohesively, turning their weaknesses into advantages. And in that realization, Xylara found herself both challenged and intrigued. By the time the discussion ended, the two commanders had reached a tentative understanding. Kane had demonstrated that humans could think beyond immediate threats, that they valued strategy, ethics, and collaboration. Xylara had shown that even the most feared alien general could be reasoned with, that honor and respect were as important as tactics and firepower. As Xylara returned to her shuttle, she felt a subtle shift within herself. Humans were not merely unpredictable or inferior, they were clever, capable, and in some ways inspiring. Kane had shown her that strength was not just about victory, but about vision, understanding, and the willingness to trust. The journey back to the Crimson Talon was quiet. Her advisors remained respectful, sensing the change in their leader. Xylara herself reflected on the human commander, his calm demeanor and his insight. She had expected arrogance, weakness, or fear. Instead, she had found wisdom, courage, and a mind capable of seeing beyond the immediate battle. When she finally returned to the bridge of her flagship, she addressed her crew. "We have met a human unlike any we have encountered," she said, voice firm but thoughtful. "He is clever, adaptable, and aware of consequences. We must reconsider our assumptions about this species. They may yet surprise us." Her officers nodded, some in quiet awe, others in curiosity. They had always known Xylara as a general of unyielding strength, but now they saw her in a new light, as a leader willing to recognize intelligence and potential in unexpected places. As the Crimson Talon drifted among the stars, Xylara's mind continued to turn. The meeting with Cain had been the first step in a process she could not yet fully understand. Humans were more than survivors. They were thinkers, negotiators, and perhaps even allies. For the first time in decades, Xylara looked forward to the next encounter, not with fear but with anticipation. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and opportunities, and somewhere among the stars a human commander waited, ready to teach, challenge, and inspire. The future, she realized, was not set in stone, and for the first time, Xylara welcomed the possibilities it might bring. The stars stretched endlessly as Xylara returned to her flagship, the Crimson Talon, her mind buzzing with questions. She had met a human unlike any she had ever encountered, a commander whose calm intelligence had forced her to reconsider everything she knew about humans. Yet, curiosity alone was not enough. She needed to understand their minds, their motives, and their unique approach to challenges. Xylara summoned her advisors to the command chamber, her sharp eyes scanning each of them in turn. "Prepare a detailed analysis of human fleet behavior," she commanded. "I want to understand not just their tactics, but the logic behind their choices. Every maneuver, every communication, every decision." Her officers exchanged glances. They were accustomed to following her orders, but even they could sense that something unusual was happening. Their general, known for her decisive confidence, was now studying humans with an intensity that went beyond strategy. It was curiosity, yes, but also a recognition of their potential. As the crew worked, Xylara paced the bridge. She reflected on her conversation with Commander Cain. He had spoken of human strength not as dominance, but as understanding and adaptability. That perspective was foreign to her, yet deeply compelling. In her own culture, strength was measured by victory, fear, and obedience. Cain's words challenged that notion entirely. Hours passed, and the human fleet remained within sensor range, maintaining a respectful distance. Cain had promised cooperation and honesty, and so far he had kept that promise. Xylara could see the subtle coordination of his ships, each moving in patterns that were unconventional but effective. Unlike most commanders she had faced, Cain did not rely on overwhelming force. He relied on observation, prediction, and subtle influence. Xylara decided it was time to test this understanding. She sent a small signal to Cain, requesting a demonstration of human problem-solving. Cain responded almost immediately, inviting her to observe a training simulation aboard his flagship. Reluctantly, she accepted. When Xylara arrived, she was led into a large observation chamber. The room was simple, illuminated by soft lights and filled with holographic displays. Cain stood at the center, explaining the exercise. "We will simulate a series of scenarios," he said. "The goal is to find solutions that minimize risk and maximize efficiency. Notice how we approach problems not with brute force, but with observation and reasoning." Xylara studied the displays carefully. The simulation involved navigating a fleet through a dense asteroid field while avoiding collisions and maintaining formation. The challenge seemed simple at first glance, yet the human fleet executed it with a precision that surprised her. They adjusted speed, position, and trajectory continuously, responding to obstacles almost instinctively. "You rely heavily on prediction and observation," Xylara remarked, her voice measured. "You anticipate not just obstacles, but the potential decisions of others." "It is effective," Cain nodded. "We try to understand the environment and the participants within it. Success is not always about force. It is about seeing patterns and adapting to them." Xylara could not help but be impressed. She had faced countless commanders who relied on strength, numbers, or intimidation. Cain relied on intellect, observation, and adaptability. The difference was striking, and it made her wonder how humans had survived and thrived despite their apparent physical limitations. As the simulation progressed, Cain introduced a variable, unexpected interference from external forces. Most fleets would panic, but the human ships adjusted seamlessly. Xylara watched as they coordinated silently, anticipating each other's movements with a level of cooperation that seemed almost intuitive. It was not just training, it was a demonstration of trust, communication, and shared understanding. "You trust your fleet to adapt," Xylera said, her tone thoughtful. Even in unexpected situations, they respond without direct orders. That requires confidence in others, a rare quality. Kane's eyes met hers, calm and steady. Trust is essential. A fleet that can think and respond independently is stronger than one that acts only on command. We teach them to understand principles, not just orders. That way, they can adapt to challenges that cannot be predicted. Xylera reflected on her own fleet. She commanded absolute obedience, yet she realized that flexibility and trust could enhance strength beyond rigid structure. Humans had found a way to empower their crews, to encourage initiative without undermining authority. It was a lesson she had never considered fully. After the simulation, Kane suggested a discussion about broader strategy and ethics. Xylera accepted, intrigued. They sat across from each other at a table, the soft glow of holograms highlighting their faces. Kane spoke of human philosophy, the value of cooperation, and the importance of minimizing harm while achieving objectives. "You see, General," he said, "strength is not just about winning battles. It is about understanding the consequences of your actions, about considering the well-being of others, and about making choices that reflect not just intelligence, but morality." Xylera listened carefully. She had spent her life making decisions that prioritized efficiency and victory, yet Kane's perspective suggested a deeper layer, one where intellect and empathy were intertwined. She had protected her fleet and her people, yes, but she had rarely considered how broader understanding could shape outcomes. "Your philosophy is fascinating," she admitted. "It challenges the core of how I have led for decades. Strength measured by wisdom and foresight rather than power alone, it is compelling." Kane smiled softly. "Humans are imperfect, but we learn, we adapt. And sometimes, the best leaders are those who understand that strength is as much about foresight and ethics as it is about skill." Xylera found herself nodding, a subtle acknowledgement of the truth in his words. For the first time, she felt that humans were not just another species to observe or defeat. They were thinkers, capable of inspiring and teaching. Kane had demonstrated a depth of understanding that went beyond strategy. It was a kind of intelligence she had not encountered before. As their discussion continued, Xylera began to share her own experiences, her decisions, and her reasoning behind past campaigns. Kane listened attentively, asking questions that encouraged reflection rather than criticism. Through their dialogue, Xylera began to see patterns she had overlooked, potential strategies she had dismissed, and consequences she had underestimated. "You analyze outcomes with precision," Kane said. "But sometimes, flexibility and empathy can reveal options that pure logic cannot. Humans have learned to see the world not just as a problem to solve, but as a network of possibilities and relationships." Xylera considered his words carefully. She had always valued logic, discipline, and foresight, yet Kane's perspective suggested a richer approach, one that combined intellect with understanding, strategy with awareness of others. She realized that her own approach, while effective, could benefit from this broader perspective. Hours passed as they exchanged ideas, debated strategies, and explored the philosophy of leadership. Xylera felt her mind expanding, challenged in ways she had not anticipated. Kane's calm confidence, his respect for her intellect, and his insistence on collaboration created an environment where learning was possible without fear or conflict. At one point, Xylera paused, her eyes reflecting the holographic stars surrounding them. "Commander Kane," she said quietly, "you have shown me that humans are capable of remarkable insight. Your approach, it is unlike anything I have encountered. I had assumed humans were weak, limited, and unprepared. Yet I see now that you are resourceful, intelligent, and capable of inspiring loyalty. It is impressive." Kane inclined his head, acknowledging her words. "Thank you, General. Humans may not be the strongest in appearance, but we have learned that intellect, adaptability, and cooperation can achieve what force alone cannot. And I believe that any species that embraces understanding and respect can achieve similar results." Xylera felt a subtle shift within her. She had faced countless challenges, but this encounter was different. It was not about victory or defeat, but about growth, understanding, and the possibility of something greater. Kane had opened her eyes to a new way of thinking, a perspective that combined strategy with morality, intellect with empathy. As the session drew to a close, Xylera prepared to return to her flagship. She felt a mixture of anticipation and reflection, aware that her understanding of humans and of leadership itself had changed. Kane had demonstrated that strength was multifaceted, that intelligence could be complemented by ethics, and that collaboration could achieve results that power alone could not. Walking back to her shuttle, Xylera considered the implications. Humans were more than a species to underestimate. They were thinkers, teachers, and potential allies. Kane had challenged her assumptions, inspired her curiosity, and shown her that even the most feared general could learn from another species. When she returned to the Crimson Talon, her officers awaited her with cautious curiosity. Xylera addressed them, her voice firm but thoughtful. "We have seen the potential of human strategy," she said. "They are clever, adaptable, and capable of understanding consequences in ways we have not anticipated. We must reconsider our assumptions and learn from them where we can." Her words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement. The crew sensed the subtle change in their general. Xylera, known for her unyielding command, had embraced a new approach, one that valued insight, observation, and collaboration alongside discipline and skill. As the Crimson Talon glided among the stars, Xylera gazed out at the human fleet, moving gracefully through the neutral belt. She felt a quiet respect, a budding trust, and an anticipation for the next encounter. Humans were not merely another species. They were capable of inspiring new ways of thinking, challenging old assumptions, and perhaps even shaping the future of the galaxy. For the first time in decades, Xylera looked forward to what lay ahead, aware that her understanding of strength, leadership, and intelligence had been forever altered. And somewhere among the stars, a human commander waited, ready to teach, challenge, and inspire once more. The Crimson Talon drifted silently through the neutral belt, its hull catching faint starlight that filtered through the scattered asteroids. Xylera moved across the bridge with purpose, her scaled fingers tracing the controls as she studied the fleet's sensors. She had spent days analyzing the human fleet, observing Commander Kane's strategies, and reflecting on their previous encounters. Each observation reinforced a truth she had not anticipated. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of foresight that rivaled even her own. And yet, a new challenge had arisen. Reports from her scouts indicated that a distant system, one she considered secure, was experiencing a critical energy disturbance. The anomaly was unstable, threatening vital trade routes and the colonies that depended on them. Xylera understood the risk immediately. If the anomaly worsened, innocent lives would be at stake. Her fleet could contain the situation, but doing so would stretch resources dangerously thin. She knew Kane could help. She had learned enough to trust, at least partially, in his insight. Yet there was tension in that trust. To ask for assistance from a human commander was unprecedented, even in her long career. She paused, staring out into the endless expanse of space. Humans were unpredictable. But they were also brilliant, and the well-being of her fleet and her people depended on making the right choice. Her communications officer spoke carefully. "General Xylera, the anomaly is increasing in intensity. We can attempt a containment protocol, but our fleet will be stretched to capacity. Should we consider requesting assistance from the human fleet?" Xylera's gaze did not waver. "Yes," she said, voice firm. "Prepare a message to Commander Kane, state the situation clearly. Request his insight and coordination. He has proven capable of thinking beyond conventional tactics. We must trust in his judgment." Her officers exchanged glances. Trusting a human so openly was a departure from protocol, but Xylera's authority was unquestioned. They proceeded with caution, transmitting the message and awaiting Kane's response. It arrived quickly, his calm voice filling the channel. "General Xylera, I have received your message. We will assist. I will send a small team to coordinate with your fleet. Together, we can stabilize the anomaly without risking unnecessary loss." Xylera allowed herself a small, imperceptible nod. Kane's words carried both confidence and strategy. He did not promise victory through force. He offered collaboration and intellect. This was the approach she had begun to admire. When Kane's team arrived, Xylera met them aboard the Crimson Talon. The human delegation was small but efficient, their movements deliberate and confident. Kane himself remained on his flagship, communicating through secure channels. Xylera observed the humans as they set up holographic displays, inputting data from the anomaly sensors. Their precision and coordination impressed her. You have studied the anomaly, Xylara said, voice calm but deliberate. Explain your approach. One of the human engineers stepped forward, her eyes bright with focus. We plan to stabilize the energy fluctuations by creating a network of synchronized field projections. The anomaly is unstable because of energy feedback loops. By carefully managing these loops, we can prevent escalation and protect surrounding colonies. Xylara nodded, following the explanation carefully. The human's method was clever, using minimal resources while maximizing control. It was a solution she might not have considered on her own, relying instead on sheer fleet coordination. Kane's influence was clear. His teaching and philosophy had shaped the human team's approach. Your solution is elegant, Xylara admitted. It prioritizes efficiency and safety. Most would attempt to overwhelm the anomaly with sheer power, but your method minimizes risk. It is impressive. The human engineer smiled. That is the philosophy of our people. Strength is not only measured by force, but by understanding, adaptability, and foresight. We learn from every challenge. Xylara watched as the humans worked alongside her officers, inputting calculations, adjusting simulations, and coordinating with her fleet. The anomaly pulsed irregularly, unpredictable in its energy output. Yet the combined efforts of human and alien strategy began to stabilize it. Xylara noted with quiet satisfaction that Kane's principles were effective even across species. Hours passed, and the anomaly's intensity gradually decreased. Xylara monitored every detail, ensuring that her fleet and the human team were synchronized. She found herself observing Kane's strategy indirectly, through the results his philosophy produced. His focus on foresight, collaboration, and respect for each team member's input created a harmony that she had never encountered in her own fleets. Commander Kane has taught them well, she remarked quietly to her second-in-command. Even without his presence, the humans coordinate with precision and insight. It is remarkable. Her second-in-command inclined his head. Yes, General, it appears that his influence has reshaped their problem-solving abilities. I have never seen such cooperation between species executed so smoothly. Xylara allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in her long career, she saw humans not as potential adversaries, but as equals in intellect and strategy. Kane's philosophy, his insistence on collaboration, had bridged the gap between species. She felt a quiet admiration, tempered by her natural caution. Trust was not given lightly, and yet she could not deny its effectiveness. As the anomaly stabilized, Xylara convened a meeting with Kane's human team. The discussion was not about orders, but about understanding outcomes and planning next steps. Each idea was evaluated for efficiency, safety, and long-term consequences. Xylara found herself contributing insights she might never have shared with any other commander, discussing nuances of energy management and fleet coordination with an openness born of trust. Kane's influence was evident even in his absence. The human's approach was methodical, intelligent, and ethical. Xylara noted that the success of their collaboration was not just in strategy, but in the mutual respect that allowed ideas to flow freely. When the last energy pulse faded and the anomaly settled into stability, Xylara allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had faced crises before, yet this was different. The situation required not only tactical skill, but trust, cooperation, and understanding across species. Kane had guided her indirectly, teaching the value of intellect combined with respect and foresight. The human engineer approached her, a hint of pride in her expression. General Xylara, the anomaly is stable. The colonies are safe. Your fleet's coordination was essential. Without your leadership, our efforts would not have succeeded. Xylara inclined her head. And your strategy ensured minimal risk and maximum efficiency. Together, we have achieved what neither could accomplish alone. I am grateful for your collaboration. The engineer smiled. That is the philosophy of our people. Collaboration, respect, and learning from one another. As the humans prepared to return to Kane's flagship, Xylara felt a deep sense of understanding. Kane's influence had not only stabilized the anomaly, but had demonstrated a fundamental truth about humans. Their strength lay not in force, but in intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to cooperate. Returning to her bridge, Xylara addressed her officers. This encounter has shown us the potential of trust and collaboration, she said. Humans may be small, but their intellect and foresight are powerful. We must recognize this strength and learn from it where we can. Her officers nodded, absorbing the lesson. They had always respected her command, but now they saw a new perspective, a leader willing to embrace insight and collaboration, even from a species once considered weak. Xylura spent the following hours analyzing the results of the mission. She noted every decision made, every calculation adjusted, and every successful maneuver. Kane's philosophy was evident in each outcome. Humans were not merely participants, they were partners in strategy, capable of achieving what brute force alone could not. As the Crimson Talon prepared to leave the neutral belt, Xylura reflected on the events. She realized that Kane had challenged her assumptions, inspired trust, and demonstrated the effectiveness of cooperation. The human commander's wisdom had not only stabilized the anomaly, but had reshaped her understanding of leadership and strength. For the first time, Xylura contemplated the possibility of surrender, not as defeat, but as an acknowledgement of wisdom and collaboration. She understood that true strength was not measured by domination, but by insight, trust, and the willingness to learn from others. Kane had shown her that humans could teach even the most feared alien general valuable lessons. The stars stretched endlessly before her, and Xylura felt a quiet anticipation. The galaxy was vast and filled with challenges, but with humans as partners, possibilities expanded beyond what she had ever imagined. Kane had shown her a path not of fear, but of mutual respect and understanding. Xylura's thoughts returned to Kane himself. He was not present physically, yet his influence shaped every decision, every strategy, and every outcome. She felt a sense of connection, a recognition that intelligence and morality could transcend species boundaries. Humans, she realized, were not to be underestimated. They could inspire trust, collaboration, and innovation in ways no other species had. As the Crimson Talon moved forward, Xylura made a quiet decision. The next step would require courage, not the courage of battle, but the courage of trust. She would rely on Kane's insight, embrace human wisdom, and take the first steps toward a partnership that could change the galaxy. And somewhere among the stars, Commander Kane awaited, unaware that his influence had already begun to reshape one of the most feared generals in the galaxy. Xylura sat in contemplation, her mind alive with possibilities. The neutral belt had tested her fleet, challenged her assumptions, and revealed the strength of collaboration. Kane's human fleet had proven that intellect, foresight, and trust could achieve outcomes impossible for even the most disciplined forces alone. She allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. The anomaly was stabilized. The colonies were safe. And yet the real lesson lay not in the success of the mission, but in the demonstration of human potential. Kane's philosophy had opened a door, one that Xylura knew she could not ignore. For the first time, she considered the idea that surrender could be a choice, not of fear, but of wisdom. By recognizing the value of collaboration, she could protect her people, maintain honor, and embrace a new way of thinking. Kane had shown her that strength and respect could coexist, and that humans were capable of inspiring even the most formidable of generals. The stars outside her viewport shimmered, endless and full of possibility. Xylura's mind was clear, focused, and aware. The next encounter would require trust, intelligence, and courage, but she was ready. Kane had already taught her the most important lesson. True strength lies not in domination, but in insight, understanding, and the ability to see the value in others. And with that thought, Xylura allowed herself a small, determined smile. The galaxy was vast, challenges awaited, and for the first time she felt confident that the future could be shaped not by fear, but by intelligence, trust, and collaboration.